I actually want to redeem this. And yeah. And then, are you able to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Can I have an iced vanilla latte? Can I have a latte iced? Yeah. And a part of me kind of wants a cold drink, but I don't know what. Do you have a good one or
Have it floating one.
oh.
Well, it's only for 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna be here for a little while because we're recording. Can I have one more one later?
Just it.
Okay, can I have the Latino, please? Yes, please. And one of the treats though, what's available?
So we have the butter, green pie, we have the home, the chocolate chip, apple pie, and tried apple pie.
Okay, so sure.
It's all about the cheese and it's all the other.
Oh, the banana bread is fine.
Happy New Year. So I'm really excited to see you guys again. I know I kind of ran well with you guys that in the last year, but things were really busy. So essentially, I ended up reading 200 books last year, and I want to talk to you about the top 20 of them. 19, 20 Malay, but I read that many. If I read 100, 10 is reasonable, so I read 200, so 20 are reasonable, okay?
So basically, let's get right to the first one. And this not in order of preference, it's just in order of how I read them. Also, by the way, we're at this coffee shop in New Kingston, Jamaica called Black Kana. And they do marijuana, CBD oil, stuff like that. I do not personally partake, but if that's something that you like, it's right in the middle of New Kingston. And you know, I love to people watch. You can people watch along Grenada Crescent, and it's really nice and central. Alright, so the first book is The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. It was published in 2009, 5 out of 5 stars. I think I probably talked about it in one of my reading wraps early in the year last year. Because I think I read this in January, and this is a historical fiction novel set in Jamaica, set in the time of slavery in Jamaican plantation life. And this book was absolutely difficult to read, but also terribly gorgeous. And when I say terribly, I mean that. We're talking about Marlon James, if you have not met him before, he does not shy away from the gore. He wants you to be grossed out. Okay, he lives for that stuff, alright? And this book is the type of book that you think about way beyond. And one of the reasons why I really like this book, beyond the historical accuracy and even not the accuracy, but the historical importance of it, is if you know about the different types of people. So you had the local overseers, and you had, which are white people but who are whites, and then you had the white people who were the plantation owners, and then you had the enslaved people, and you had the mixed race people who lived in the house, and all of the variations in between. And so this book covered perspectives from each, and it was really about the women who ran each of those spheres, right, from the white woman straight down to the enslaved. And we'll learn about each of their power, right, whose power is overt and whose power is covert, right. We learn about who is wicked and who does this and that and the third. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I just bought me a latte. This is a vanilla, and I don't like a lot of sweeteners, so I'm really excited to try it. And the apple pie apparently is a favorite, so I'm really excited to try it. Sorry, I had to break to get apple pie and coffee. I was talking about The Book of Night Women. So this book takes through all the emotions, and this book I felt guilty for the whole year. I'm not even exaggerating, because there is an enslaved woman who obviously she is someone's property at this point in life, in history. And this Scottish man who calls her Lubby, he calls her an endearment. He falls in love with her. He has her live with him. By the way, she's like the main protagonist of this story. And it was a beautiful romance, but it was tragic. And obviously, like, I just felt so conflicted, because I am a romance girl down. And when romance not did it, everything romantic to me. So when we have two people who are literally star-crossed lovers falling in love, and this almost like against everything in their society. I felt guilty for the majority of the year, but it was a beautiful book and I recommend it to anyone. Your stomach have to kind of strong for some of the things. There's people dying. There's things I didn't even know existed at that time, like substance abuse and, you don't think about in historical time, but that's why I really enjoyed what he did. So that book, I also want a physical copy and it was one of my top 10, Caribbean reads of last year as well. So book 2 is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And this is one of the books out of 20, right? Remember that I gave myself 20 this year because I read 200 books. So this book is fiction published in 2022 and it is still on one of many of people's Goodreads list. There's still a long wait to read it because it is one of the most beautiful written examples of love in every form. I'm not just talking romantic. I'm talking platonic. I'm talking brother and brother. I'm talking about siblings and parents. This book is tragic. It's also beautiful. And this is a book about two people who truly, if you never believe, you're one of those people who don't believe boy and girl can just be friends and nothing more, this book will make you believe that. Okay. And one of the things that made this book so special was actually, it had a perspective on passion for vocation they make games, right? So game is a big industry, and if you ever had a little Playboy or a little Nintendo Switch or whatever, right, depending on how much you love that game, you can burn through that game in, I don't know, 2 days, 2 weeks, depending on the level of difficulty. But this showed what goes into the years, the months of dedication that goes into building some of these games and the teams and how it affects the teams. It showed sickness. It showed children who, they have either in children's hospitals, and what that means for them when their health is compromised, and how that takes their childhood takes a departure from what is normal. And it shows, the type of relationships around them and how their parents treat them. Sometimes they're babied, sometimes they don't have any independence. It covered so many things, and the cover gives you nothing. Okay, the cover gives you nothing. You don't know what it's about. But this is a book that I don't think I said 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I sometimes felt guilty telling people about it just because it was about 2 white kids. Like one of them, they went to Harvard, they were like, clearly fine. But it was so beautiful. Like, I feel like there is something about love in this for everyone. And again, there was romantic love, but not necessarily between the two main characters. So it was always this delicate thing of, because in all the books and movies we read, we always expect that the two main characters get together at some point. But that wasn't the main focus here, and it was still really gorgeous. So I think if you just love love the way I love love, you will really like this book.
So another of the top 20 books, The Kindest Lie by Nancy Johnson. So this is like a mix of, it's fiction. It was published in 2021. It's by a Black American author. And it's basically family drama. If you love a good soap opera, this is going to be for you. But it was really touching and unexpected. So basically, there's this lady and she's really successful. She's an engineer. Her and her husband are doing really well. She's left her small town and her family. She basically lives a whole different life now from the life that she grew up in. And she returns home, she has a big family secret basically from her husband. Also this calls back, if you've read or watched Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, who is a Jamaican author, it's giving that kind of vibes where there's family secrets and whatever, but it's more than that, right? And I hate to be that person. Sometimes when you have Black people and you have a white character that's unexpected, they just get the awe factor, especially when it's a child. This is happening here. So there's this boy who, like, poor whites, right? And, sometimes they're not very well parented. They're just Lego bees. They're just out and about, right? And, he basically forms an attachment to this lady, and she's back trying to get her life together. She's on some secret quest from her husband, and I won't spoil it for you, but basically, it gets to a point where when the husband finally finds out, he's basically like, do I even know you type thing, and,
I really liked this book because again, it showed a variety of ages. So they had the grandmother, it had the actual woman and the husband. So it had like 3 different generations who are being considered here. It had different races, and it had this thing about the life that we had growing up and the mistakes that we make, whether or not we're able to overcome them, because she would go back home and she'd see a lot of the people who her life could have turned out the same. And we know stories like that all the time. And I thought the author did a really good job of illustrating that here. And I just thought it was beautiful. So I actually gave this book a 4 out of 5, I believe. Let me double check. Yeah, so I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's not the kind of book I'd read again, but it is the kind of book that I think I would recommend to people, especially people who've kind of like our parents' generation, I'd actually recommend for them to read, or anybody who sometimes struggles with survivor's guilt in the sense that they made it out of a situation that was really hard. I would actually recommend this. Okay, another of my top 20 books of 2025, The Tale of the Last Flower Bride, or is it The Last Tale of the... The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. And this was published in 2023. Now, I'm sorry to be that person who compares two bad girls against each other, but this is what I thought Mexican Gothic would be. Everybody talks about Mexican Gothic if you like Gothic, like you like horror, mystery type, not necessarily gory, but like you don't know what's coming next. It's a bit of a thriller. I don't enjoy thrillers. I like to sleep in my bed at night. I thought this was gonna kind of keep me up. And the reason I read this, I wouldn't have picked it for myself, but it's actually a part of a challenge. So I always do the StoryGraph Read Around the World challenge. So it basically has 10 countries that they pick, and you're allowed to read a book that's based in one of those countries or by an author from that country over the course of a year. And so this was for the Philippines. And this is like a mystery, and it's like a horror, and it's like Gothic, like real Gothic. Like, yeah, people die, and it's not gory, but it's like, people are kind of, what's the word? Like, people are crazy. Okay, they're sociopathic. I actually looked up the definition of that word. Sociopathic. Okay, so it follows this girl and her childhood friend, and somebody dies and you don't know who is who. Okay, that's all I'll say. And she falls in love with a guy, and that's what drew me in as a romance girly. There's like a romance in there, and he's also getting to know this like sociopathic girlfriend that he has, and so it's like a girl who was a sociopath and one who becomes one. That's all I'll say, right? And I think it was really beautifully written. The imagery was gorgeous. It was very intimate at parts, both in like sisterly devotion in the family. So they were like, there's like a rich family, and they basically adopted this girl, and who was the daughter's friend, and the way that they depict their environment is gorgeous. So if you like something that's ambient and it feels like you hear the title Mexican Gothic, even when you look at the cover of this book, it gives you that vibe. If you just want to curl up, if you like a good like thriller horror Gothic, you're gonna like it. Okay, so another of my top 20 books of 2025, Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This is popular. I tend to shy away from popular books because I find that a lot of them are trash. This was not trash. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's about sisterhood, and even if you've never had a sister, if you've had close friends, if you've had a family, people who they grow up together, they're not always in sync. There's always mess. So these are 4 sisters. They're all shapes and sizes, personalities. And it's basically a tale of 2 cities. So New York, I believe, and London, because the sisters are in different places. One of them is a model. One is a boxer. One of them, I'm forgetting now, but they basically do 4 different things. One of them is like the oldest one, and she takes care of them because their parents weren't very good parents, if we're being real. And it's basically just a story about how they find each other. One of them dies, and it's basically the aftermath of what happens when one of them dies. And this was so beautiful. Like, again, this is another one that gives you all the emotions. And I actually think, even though it's a book about 4 women, that men would enjoy this just because it is so, there's right? Just because there's a range of sexuality there, there's a range of personality, and there's a range of, like I said, one of the women is a boxer, and you know, you would find a lot of points to find interest and perspectives that you can relate to in this book. And so I think that it could be interesting to a lot of people, including men. And I think that the cover is very beautiful. This author's covers are gorgeous. They look like paintings. And it's the type of cover you could actually print and frame if you really love this book, or it would make a really good, library pick, like in your home library. So, not overrated at all. All right, so another of my top 20 books from last year is one called Jamaica Road by Lisa Smith. So I'm Jamaican. The title Jamaica is in the title. It's actually... it's actually one of the books is based in the UK. All right. So basically, with the Windrush generation, if you're not aware, so it would have been our grandparents' generation. So our parents' parents, a lot of them traveled from the Caribbean to the UK, especially to areas like London and so on to help build their industry. A lot of nurses went at that time and so on in the 50s and 60s, and they basically helped to build their nation. And so, the generation of children that were born and raised in that time, a lot of them are now our parents, and they're writing stories and they're sharing, and they're being recognized. Their parents are being recognized in their society now. But anyways, there are actually 2 Windrush books that came out around about summer last year, and this is one of them. And this book is gonna resonate with people who are migrants. It's gonna resonate with people who are children and grandchildren of those people. Listen, the Windrush generation, they have nothing but trauma. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, they went and they built their life, but they have so much trauma, and it's still coming out. The art that's reflecting from their children who are or parents' generation, it's still reflecting and coming out in all the things they've dealt with, including racial injustice and including social injustice. And those things come out, and this book has romance in it, but it is not primarily a romance. It's primarily told from the perspective of a young girl and her friend who actually migrates from Jamaica at a point where they're just about teenagers and they grow up together. So he comes in with this thick accent. He's from, I think, St. Elizabeth, and she's British through and through, and they don't even live in like London. They live in the parts where they sound weird. Okay. And they get to be good friends, and both families have a bit of drama, but more so the boy, his name is Connie, and his mother is basically in an abusive relationship, and as they grow up, they're dealing with that. The man is super abusive, like he's also a womanizer, which is not uncommon in our culture, but it's the way it's written. It's like you can see that story in so many families. And I just feel like the book did a really good job of showing 3 different generations, what it's like for them in the UK, having in that time in the 60s, 50s, 60s. They even showed a bit of return migration. What happens how do they start over if they choose to come back home? Where do they start from? Where do they pick up the pieces? And I feel like the reason this story wasn't in top 10 for me is because I felt like, while it was very, it had strong perspectives, it didn't really change I knew this. In fact, it made me more mad at Windrush generation, because I feel like they need to go to therapy and they need to apologize for some of the mess that they've done, especially to their children and what they've had them deal with. Our generation is definitely, we believe in apologizing, and they don't. Okay, but anyways, this was a beautiful book and one of my top 10 Caribbean reads of 2025. Okay, another of my top 20 books of 2025. All right, so this was like not even top 10, top 5 romance of the year last year. This was a second in a trilogy. It is Only Your Dreams by Ellie Wilde. And it's a sports romance, but it's not even your typical corny sport. Yeah, most of them are corny. It's fine. We eat them out with their corny, okay? The character growth in these, especially for the female character, the strength, the resilience. Listen, I am not gonna lie. It's not that I expected it to be bad, but this exceeded expectations for me. 5 out of 5 stars. And you don't know by looking on the cover. This cover does nothing. The cover is okay, fine. But if you don't go for your typical white couple romance, you are not going to pick this up. But the story was so good. The character growth was so good. And I find that so there's basically a fake dating trope, and it's really hard to make that feel fresh. And the author did that so well here. And not only did she exceed the first book in terms of the romance itself, but also she all right, so the male character in this, he's going through some struggles. And sports guys can be really mean, especially when they're used to being up. When they're not up anymore, they struggle with that, okay? Hello? Yeah. Yeah, so some of these men, when they're up, especially when they're athletes and they're used to getting everything they want, they're mean when things are not going well for them. And I found that she found a nuance with giving him softness without being like, there's this thing about masculinity, right? And the men claim, we want them to be soft, but when them soft, we don't want them. I think the author found the balance, and I was surprised by both depictions actually, and the love story. Also the spicy scenes, they weren't just spicy and just wham bam thank you ma'am. Like the romance, the actual romance was all like top 5. I would recommend this, the whole trilogy, 8. I think the only other trilogy last year that was this good was Kennedy Ryan. And honest to God, I love me some Kennedy Ryan, but the way that this was unexpected for me, I would put this trilogy above the Kennedy Ryan trilogy. Like she released that the last in the trilogy came out last year, but all of this trilogy came out last year, but Kennedy Ryan's last one came out last year. So I read them all last year. But anyways, this one actually tops that for me. And if you love a good romance and you like a sports romance and it's heated rivalry season right now, you will like this. But they're football, not hockey, but still, you will like it. So one of my top 20 of 2025 is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. His name is Gorgeous. Who calls the kid Ocean? But anyways, so 5 stars. I think, and I don't mean to say, I hope this doesn't, okay. He's a gay man and he's a poet, and his writing is some of the most beautiful writing I've ever read. The imagery. This is how I know I just love, because his description of his love with his mom, his love with the person that he, falls in love with. And, it just makes me want to just go back and reread the book. It kind of, so I think I talked about one called Levers last year, which was also by an Asian American. And this book reminds me of Levers in the sense of the mother-son relationship and the immigrant story there. And it also reminds me of one called Children of the Land, which is by a Mexican writer who, that was also an immigration, but his was a memoir, really. But those themes are present in this book. There's one scene, there are multiple scenes in this book that are so special. And one of the things about this book, sorry, I'm insulting myself, is that it feels like a real story. And it's fiction. That to me is amazing. So I like on this. If you've ever read, so Safia Sinclair wrote How to Save Babylon, she's a poet, and that was her memoir. This novel would feel like that, like a poet who's writing their memoir, but it's not even his real life. And that was mind blowing to me. And I feel like he told this story in there about how the mother character, she would do nails, right? They're Vietnamese, and she would do nails in a nail shop, and a white woman came in and she had an amputated leg, and the woman asked her, she would, when you get the pedicure, they do the massage, and the woman asked to do the pedicure on the other leg, even though it's not really there, because she said she saw it, sometimes she feels it. And if you know anybody who's had an amputation, they tell you to have the phantom feeling. And that to me, just describing putting a scene in that out of nowhere, it fits, but it's neither here nor there. You know what I mean? And it just elevated the story. And I feel like this book was really special. And I just hope you're not homophobic, because he's gay, but It's a beautiful story, and it does not get over that. Just read the book because it is so good. Right, so one of my top 10 books of 2025 is actually a cookbook. This book is called Kin by Marie Mitchell. It's Caribbean recipes for the modern kitchen. This book is getting the place of honor in my kitchen with a little spotlight, with a little stand. And basically, it is a book by a British woman, a British Jamaican woman whose love story, her love letter to her family was to honor them by putting together, testing and retesting their recipes and putting them into this book. People, one of my favorite cookbooks I have ever seen, and I mean ever. I want you to come and I want you to see the photos. The photos are on the ground in Jamaica. The photos, she has little anecdotes, right? She has all the things. I think this is perfect if you don't live at home, if you have access to some of the things. Okay, she's teaching you how to make green seasoning. She's teaching you how to make Scotch bonnet pepper from scratch, pepper sauce from scratch. Right? She's teaching you how to make vami, not vami. I'm gonna tell you, there was something she made in it, and I'm like, I'm not making like a roti. She teach you how to make a roti. I'm not making roti from scratch. There are people who do it, and I eat roti and I make roti. Right? There is what I call achievable, right? Recipes in here, doable. But my favorite hands down feature, I mean, look at the material. My favorite hands down feature, other than the design. When I say design, I mean like the typeface, the font. I mean, look at this font. Look at the font here, right? Tamlin Sparkle, their drinks. I like the breakdown of it. But other than her, the design of this book, my favorite thing about it is actually the glossary. So if you look at the let me show you. So here they are listing the books, right? And my favorite is this page. All right, so these are the ingredients. These are the Caribbean ingredients. If you've never seen these things before, if you're not from Caribbean, right? I mean, look at that. Okay, look at sorrel. Oh my, look at these things. They are cooking. Okay, if you don't know what these things are, she is giving you an illustration. So the illustrator, big up the illustrator, big up Miss Marie. Okay, if I find a picture of it, there's a picture of her with her family, and it is just honestly the most gorgeous cookbook. And because I live here, I take for granted some of the things, but I also lived abroad, and I know you can't find some things, or when you find it, it costs an arm and a leg. So what she's done here is really special. And I also think the publisher, we get a big up as well for putting this out there.